Joining the SBJ Sports Media Podcast this week, appearing in the soon-to-be-released drama September 5th, is actor Peter Sarsgaard. Peter, thanks for coming on to talk about the film.
Thank you for having me.
Peter, this movie is centered around the 1972 Munich Olympics massacre, but told completely through the perspective and experiences of that ABC Sports TV crew that ended up covering that tragic terrorist event. First, what drew you to this kind of story, and particularly to your character, Rune Arledge, who was president of ABC Sports at the time?
Well, I was familiar with the story of September 5th and the hostage crisis at the 72 Olympics, mainly, I think, from the documentary A Day in September. So when I got the script, I think that impressed me most was that it, was the point of view, that it was through these sports journalists. I hadn't realized that the whole thing was covered by sports journalists. So that was interesting to me. Then I met Tim, and he's such a visual guy, and I thought, how interesting to have someone who's so visual try to tell this story that's like in this very small room. And in terms of playing Rune, I'm a huge sports fan. I grew up watching, Wide World of Sports and the Olympics that he did and everything. But I didn't really know of Rune Arledge. His face looked very familiar to me when I first saw it. I remember looking it up. So I didn't worry too much about playing him in particular. I thought about a lot of the aspects of his life that were interesting, how powerful he was, what a visionary he was. And that was, it's always interesting to play somebody who's seeing beyond the current situation, that has some sort of like master plan.
Yeah, obviously definitely a legend in our business.
Yeah.
Created Monday Night Football, like you said, created Wide World of Sports. Was there any particular piece of material that you used, or, where did you go in terms of researching, for Rune's role in the film?
Well, Tim gave me a whole bunch of information. There's a book that has 2 chapters in it that are devoted to this, Rune's autobiography, people who knew him, footage of him, all that kind of stuff. Honestly, that kind of thing I do pretty early on as an actor, and then kind of forget it. Whatever sticks, I carry on into the movie. And the things that stick usually have to do with the story. So there's a lot of, you can kind of do your homework like a good student and do a great report on the person you're playing, but it's the things that you internalize that become meaningful. And I was always very interested in the fact that he thought of himself as a storyteller, that he treated the Olympics. I think he made the Olympics accessible to so many more people by telling those stories, those background stories that got everyone interested in the real drama that was going on. Mm-hmm. And then he took that sense of storytelling and drama and ended up putting it into the news eventually, for better or worse. We live in an age where the news is sort of mixed with an entertainment value. So that's kind of how I work it out. I do a lot of daydreaming. The job of being an actor sometimes is just like getting out of the way of what your unconscious mind wants you to do.
There was a lot of on-air video footage of ABC Sports' Jim McKay weaved into the film, and it really lends to the drama in there. How important was that footage in really making all of this work?
To me, that's the film. When I was thinking about the film, I always thought Jim McKay is our lead. He's the ethical, moral conscience of the movie. Our acting not only has to sort of be able to live with his in terms of cutting from us to him, in terms of reality, but also that it was like a standard of behavior. And I thought, I always liked him, but, really looking at this footage and thinking about the given circumstances, he's so impressive.
Do you think that this story, specifically, how the media covered such a pivotal live event, resonates even more now in 2024?
Well, you have to ask yourself, what is the purpose of live coverage? What is the purpose of rolling coverage on news events? I would say more often than not, kind of live 24-hour news coverage leads to mistakes more often than coverage that takes its time, that gets the information and then, like old school, like you learn about it a couple hours later or a day later, where they're sure they have everything straight. I think it's pretty obvious to everyone that we live at like a crisis moment in terms of journalism. The internet has been a big part of that, and that's not really something this film addresses. But I think also this appetite for, they call it doom scrolling or whatever, right? Like whatever just happened or is about to happen. It's not just the need to know so that you can change your behavior in the world or work with people to change things in a positive way. But I think part of it is like, the Germans have the word Schadenfreude. It's sort of like a delight in other people's misery. I think that that's a really real thing that if we're all pretty honest with ourselves, we experience some version of. So I think there's a place for live coverage and a place for it, and it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle. Some of this is just asking some of the simple questions of journalism that have been lost.
All right, Peter, you said you're a big sports fan. Do you think there is another sports story out there that you think you want to one day maybe help tell?
My dream is to one day play a coach like Gene Hackman in Hoosiers. That would be. I had a couple of coaches. I was a soccer player, and I had a couple of coaches that were the most important men in my life. And it's been done a million times in a million different ways, so it would have to be some sort of original
story. For a reason, I suppose.
But the beautiful thing about Hoosiers also was Dennis Hopper's character, that we pull along even the people that have the biggest problems. I love. It's such a positive movie without being a sentimental movie. But even Bobby Knight had a certain type of love for the players that he coached. Might have thrown a chair or two, but
maybe just a chair or two.
Just a chair or two, yeah.
Well, the film is September 5th. It'll be released on November 29th. Peter Sarsgaard, thank you so much for joining the SBJ Sports Media Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, man.